Hi everyone, this is Libby Murray and I want to welcome you to another one of Lifetime Adoption's webinars. I'm excited about our guest tonight, and as many of you may have seen in the email invitation over the last week or so, we've actually heard from adoptive mom Tanya before. I think it's been a couple years now, but she had shared her story about moving from infertility to adoption, and I hope that all of you may have had a chance to listen to that and to just hear her perspective and hear those early days of her story. And that I know that that's often a struggle that many of you walk through as you decide when to adopt, but that also sometimes those feelings come up when you are waiting to adopt as well. And so her story, I know, blessed a lot of people back then, and I'm excited to have her back today because she will be able to update us on what's happened the last couple of years and really shed some light on what open adoption can look like over time, now that she has 2 children and that she's been developing these relationships with their birth parents, over the last few years. So I also want to make sure that you know that this is a time, if you have a question on your mind, to share it. And as we did with the sound check, you can do that in a couple of different ways. I want you to be able to type questions with us tonight through that questions or chat box on your screen, or email them to me directly. My email again is libby@lifetimeadoption.com. And if you have a question tonight, I'm pleased that I'm joined by my co-host Jen Donnelly, who's another part of Lifetime's Adoptive Family Coordinator team. Hi
there.
She's going to be available, and either one of us may be able to get to some of your questions behind the scenes. If you have a question on your mind that may not be relevant for Tanya to answer tonight, or if it's off topic, or if it's just so specifically unique to you, we want to be able to also use this time to engage with you one-on-one if possible. But as a reminder, just know that Lifetime is available to help with any questions pretty much any time. And we know that whether you're already waiting to adopt, or if you're just now beginning to think about adoption, or if you're moving through the process of exploring your options with Lifetime, that you can call our office Monday through Friday at 530-432-7373. And I know many of you may actually recognize working with Jen, but a lot of you may have your own personal coordinator too, and she is more than happy to answer any questions if you call her or email her directly. We just want to encourage you to stay in touch and never feel like you have to hold back on a question, or that even if you've asked it before that you can't ask it again, because I think clarity in adoption is probably one of the most important elements to adoption success. So just know that we're happy to help in any way. And as a review too, there's a ton of information at lifetimeadoption.com. And I would love, if you're not yet following us on Facebook, for you to become a fan and come on over to our page, which you can get to at facebook.com/open.adoption. And we have a lot of different conversations going on there. We like to show photos of the babies and the families being put together, and we also post a lot of information for birth mothers, and that may help you understand some of their perspective and where they're coming from too. So, Jen, I know we're eager to get started here tonight, but is there anything you want to add as far as maybe for families who haven't yet applied?
Apply, take the first step. It's free, so there's no obligation to you. And really what it does is it allows us to review what you're looking for in an adoption, so we can really assess whether or not we're going to be the right program to help you adopt here.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. And for everyone to know that, Lifetime only has a certain number of openings every month, but how we review that and look at that is also as much about your own success as it is about us meeting the needs of the birth mother's calling. So please don't hold back. I know, Jen, you hear this a lot too, but I've heard from so many families they feel like they have to get all their ducks in a row before they even apply. And I really feel like our application process helps you get ducks in a row so that you know which direction is best for your family. So I hope you'll take the time to allow us to get to know you. Tonight I'm excited because I want to focus on open adoption because I know that, well, I would say whether you are already working with Lifetime or you haven't yet begun the process, one of the number one questions I hear about, and Jen, I think you and I were talking about this yesterday, is what can I expect with open adoption? What does that look like? How do I get past my nerves? What is it like to stay in touch with a birth mother? How do I talk to my kids about their birth families? Just so many questions circle around this idea of having an open adoption. And Tanya has two, and her adoptions may seem very open to you, especially if you're just in the early phases of researching what this could look like for your family. But I want you to listen with open ears and a soft heart, because what you hear behind her stories is her sincerity for where her children started and just how important they are in their life now and the benefits of open adoption to their entire family. And before we welcome Tanya in, I just want to read a couple of quotes that prompted our webinar tonight that I just, and Tanya may have even forgotten she sent me these, but she had these tips for parents thinking about adopting. She said, "We were scared to have open adoptions, but honestly, I would be disappointed to have it any other way. The kids know they're belly mamas," in quotes, "and these women are like sisters to me. I can't imagine them not being a part of our lives. Our adoptions are quite different, and each brought a lesson in patience. We put our birth moms first. What we want is second. She's trusting you with her baby's life. Think about the situation from her shoes. Compassion is everything, and don't judge a situation. Adopting a baby to us meant that we gained a whole family. We have contact with most of the grandparents and birth parents. Not constant, but enough to keep in touch. It's important to us." So with that, I'm going to switch over here and welcome you, Tanya. Tanya, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you didn't mind me reading some of those tips out loud. I just was
No,
reading.
you made me curious.
Well, what you wrote is meaningful to us because it is so important for people to understand that open adoption doesn't have to be, that you don't have to feel so guarded and nervous, that there are steps and perspectives to help you get to that place that you wrote about. So you and Jake adopted. Now Connor is, what did you tell me? He's almost 6, or he just turned 6?
He'll turn 6 at the end of the month.
Okay. And then Cassidy, your youngest, here we see on the screen, she just turned 2?
Yeah, in June.
Okay. So you've had 6 years here of open adoption. Can you remember back before you even knew about Connor's birth mother, how you guys initially felt about open adoption? What brought you to where you are today, or just even to the place of being open to it?
We were really nervous about it, and Lifetime had recommended that we open our hearts and do an open adoption, and I was more looking forward to it than Jake. Jake was pretty skeptical because he didn't understand what it meant. And so we just started hounding anybody that was adopted, and we asked them, you know, if they had an open or closed adoption, if one was closed, how they felt and how they were raised. And we came up with the complete opinion from everybody that an open adoption is healthiest for the child, and depending on the situation, it's better for the families to have that. It's more of a closure than just not knowing anything. You know the baby's safe. You know how to contact the mother if you had a question that for like a medical reason that came up for us. So it just made it a lot easier overall to say, okay, we're willing to try the open adoption. We're open to the level of contact that you want with us, and you tell us what you want, and we'll decide if we're ready for that. And we've never had our toes stepped on. They're very respectful of what we're willing to do. So
wow.
We've had both birth moms stay at our house with us for long weekends. I mean, they're like sisters.
So, I mean, and for those of you in the audience who just heard what she said, and you might be choking up thinking, they stayed at your house? What? Um, you know, for you and Jake, do you
That
ever?
was our decision. They did not ask us that.
Okay.
They said, did you book me a hotel? And I said, I can if you'd like, but we also have a spare room. And they said, okay.
Wow.
So we kicked the kids out. We didn't have them stay in the room with the child. I didn't think that that would be fair for them.
Mm-hmm. And now that you've had that experience, do you look back at before and think, wow, we sure came a long way. You know, I never imagined they'd be staying in our house for a visit.
Yeah, and honestly, we waited a while to contact Karen, Connor's birth mom, because we met her so quickly that we didn't know how much contact she wanted, and she had never had to be pregnant or give up a child, so she took it a lot differently than Cassidy's birth mom. Cassidy was the third born, and so we didn't know what to do to soothe her, so we backed out and we waited for her to contact us, and it was a significant amount of time, and I wish that we would have reached out to her sooner. I think it would have helped her, but we didn't know.
Yeah. What do you mean that you didn't know? Because you were waiting for her to cue you in?
We didn't want to hurt her more by contacting her, so we weren't sure if she'd want to be in our lives or not, and we wanted to give her time to process it and heal. She was a mess when we left her, and she checked out of the hospital before Connor did. And so she had to say goodbye to us, and then we stayed overnight in the hospital with him until he was cleared to go home. And we took him home from Seattle to the east side of Washington. And she didn't really have very much family to back her. She was adopted, and her adoptive parents were supportive of us, so she couldn't lean on them. From her standpoint, that's what she told us. And so her birth parents are in Pennsylvania, and they didn't know that she'd already picked a family to place Connor with, and she wasn't with the birth father. She was with her boyfriend. The boyfriend said, if you keep the baby, I'm not going to marry you. So nobody was helping her like she did. So it was a sad situation. But we've talked and hashed it out, and she's a lot better now.
And this was your youngest. This was Cassidy's birth mom?
This is Connor.
Okay, that's right. So were you a support for her in a way? Because I've seen that a lot of times where there can be a connection, and that the adoptive parents are almost a more sympathetic or more understanding support than even the loved ones in her life around who may be supportive of her choice, but they may not know how to help her. Did she lean on you in any way through those early times?
Not really. I think that she was terrified of scaring us off, because when you sign up and you say, I hope to do an open adoption, there's nothing that you sign that says you're bound to do it. So if she decided to go and get addicted to drugs or do something, we can peace out and we can say, you know what, you screwed up, we're done. And they are well aware of that, and they will not do anything that would make us upset, because they don't want to lose that tie. So they've been very careful with us about making sure that they're respectful. And do you want me to be Aunt Karen? Do you want me to be Karen? Do you want me to be friend Karen? I'm like, honey, you're a belly mama. So we've been supportive of them in their role as a birth mom.
So I don't know if it's interesting to most people on the call, but I do think that a lot of times what's hard about open adoption from the point of we haven't adopted yet or we're just thinking about it is it's hard to imagine what your child's birth mother is going to be like, who she'll be like, and what her circumstances are. So let's go back to Connor, and when you found out, when his birth mom chose you, were you surprised that she too was adopted?
Well, we didn't have very much time to prepare. I got the phone call on his birthday at 1 o'clock saying that we had been chosen and that it was a baby boy and gave me height and weight for her and the birth father and do you want the baby? And it was like, are you kidding me? Of course I do. And so we ended up getting him at 9 o'clock that night in the hospital. And so when we walked in, we were instantly meeting his birth mom and adopting him. And so in 8 hours, we went from a couple to parents with a birth mom.
Yeah.
And so it was a big change, and we didn't know what to say to her. Like, hi, this is what we look like, and thanks for, choosing us. It was very odd to walk in and not have met her. And of course, I was super thankful that it was quick because I'm not patient, but it could have gone a lot smoother with her had we known her, but she went into labor 6 weeks early, so she thought she had more time to choose.
Okay. Which that's so important to bring up is that even if it's last minute, a birth mother can still choose a family. And a lot of times, I mean, I've seen this happen a lot where they think they've got another month or at least a couple weeks before their due date. And so they call Lifetime expecting that they're going to have a few weeks to get things together before the baby's born. And then they go into labor. And that's why we're always emphasizing, hey, and by the way, if you go into labor this weekend, just call. It's not too late. Everything can still happen. And so here she had chosen you. And I know sometimes it's hard to imagine that there could be this woman out there with your profile who's about to tell Lifetime, I want to talk with them, but then she goes into labor and it all seems very last minute, but to her, she's already been thinking about you for a little while. It's just so hard to predict exactly how it can go, but that you guys were open to how it went down, how it played out.
Right.
And that was in your own state, you said, right?
Yes.
So then with Cassidy's adoption, you actually adopted out of state?
Yeah, we signed up for the full deal in January, and by March we were like, where is our baby? Because with Connor, we were only signed up for 12 days. And so we talked and we changed a couple preferences to be a little more open, and then and before those preferences were even applied, we got the phone call on April Fool's Day that Kayla had chosen us for Cassidy. And so we had, and she was due at the end of June, and Kayla was pregnant with Cassidy as her third baby. She was legally separated from her husband, and she didn't have family support for keeping the baby. They were supportive of her giving up Cassidy for adoption. And so we knew that she was going to end up going into labor early because she had the other two children. And so we did a gambling game, which I hate gambling. And I bought a plane ticket in May to fly out to meet with her I think I flew in the 11th to Cleveland, drove to Toledo by myself, and I was scared to death because no one knew where I was. And I met her the 12th, and it was amazing. We had been texting daily, and I made sure to not ask about Cassidy. I made sure to say, hey, how was your day at work? What did you do? Did you get your hair done? Did you buy new shoes? And if she brought up Cassidy, that was great, but if not, then I let it be. I really wanted her to know that we were focused on her because nobody in her life had done that for her. And full moon hit in June 15th, Cass was born, so I got to be there and catch her and cut the umbilical cord, and Jake was in Denver waiting for a plane.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was the only sad part of that.
But she involved you that intimately in the labor.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I messed up because I should have gone and checked out how to get to the hospital because she had been kind of headachy and restless, and I should have realized that I needed to get in the car and make sure I knew how to get there. And she called me at 3:47 in the morning. And I knew it was her, and I knew she was in labor. And so she said, can you come and pick me up? And I said, sure. Is your husband going to go? Because he was helping her even though they weren't together. And so she said, no, he's going to stay out of the hospital, that you can go with me and he'll come later. Well, he never showed, so I got put as birth coach. So nobody else was there but us. So it was very intimate and very comfortable, surprisingly.
Did you, we had a question come in, was there ever a thought in your mind that you wouldn't be comfortable being part of the labor and delivery?
No, not really. I've taken a lot of anatomy, so I can handle the blood and the guts and all of that. It's my own blood and guts that caused me problems. My sister-in-law had given birth in January, and she knew that there was a high possibility that I would never get to be a part of a labor and delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And so she asked me if I would be interested in watching my nephew be born. And so I was there for that, and it was very enlightening because it was so different from how Cassie was born. My sister-in-law was a natural birth and took a long time, and she was very quiet and calm and collected. And she had a doula. And so the doula did a lot of relaxation techniques. Well, Shayla had had 2 babies before, but I don't think she'd ever had a birthing class. So I'm the one telling her to remember to breathe and to remember to do this, and this is the transition, and this is, so I knew more about the pregnancy and delivery than she did, and she had been through it before. So it was very weird that way to have knowledge that she didn't know. But she was young and didn't have access to everything that she needed to understand what was going on with her body.
But that you were able to, and I've seen this happen before. In fact, I was just, we were having a meeting actually last weekend because some of the help that we're offering birth mothers sometimes is not so much adoption related as it is just basic pregnancy related. And a lot of these women, even if they've had children before, don't always know what to expect or don't always have the same resources that, say, an average family who's trying to have a child or who's under stable circumstances or who just has more help and resources at their fingertips. You know, sometimes I've been talking to women and I've had to say, you know, that sounds like your water's breaking. You should go to the ER. And so here you're able to, it was almost like you were prepared ahead of time to at least have a heads up and then be a help for her. It was like, what a gift your sister gave you.
Right. It was very helpful.
To be there for her in that way because, like you said earlier, it's not all about the baby. It's as much about being there for her.
Right.
How did you, because a lot of people, and I see this across the board with different adoption sites, a lot of people make it very baby-focused. I mean, how did you and Jake come to the understanding and the awareness that we need to make this about her and not be all about the baby?
Well, I have a degree in psychology and human development, and so I think I'm a little more aware than I would have been if I had chosen something else as my background. But I started to see the patterns within the families that we were witnessing, and the women that are our birth moms don't have the support that they need. And like Karen, Connor's birth mom, was raised as an only child. Well, when she was approached by her birth family when she was 19, she had full-blooded siblings and 5 of us, and it was very hard for her. And she leaned on us about that because it was so hurtful, and it had been years since she'd met them. With Kayla, she's the middle of 5 girls. She was the perfect middle child. She didn't do anything wrong, and she didn't get very much attention because she wasn't the naughty one, and she wasn't the first, and she wasn't the baby. And we just started realizing these women just need someone to lean on. And we were more than happy to have them do that. And we had decided with Kayla, you know, she was young. We didn't know if she was going to like us when we met her. And Ohio has a 6-month waiting period, so we couldn't close until Cassie was 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And she could have been taken away by the state. And so we knew we were tiptoeing, and a happy birth mom makes an adoption so much easier, because she could have changed her mind at some point before she signed a waiver saying that she promised that we could keep Cassidy. But you know, more than anything, it's peace of mind. I know that they're happy with us, and that means the world to me. And for example, Kayla contacted me maybe, I don't know, it must have been 3 weeks after she had picked us, and we were texting back and forth, and she said, I woke up and the power was turned off because we can't afford to pay the heat. And I got a hold of my husband, and I said, I feel like we need to risk it and pay her heating bill. And he said, well, what happens if we don't get a baby? And it's like, you know what, for $147, it's going to pay for her heat for 2 months and catch her up. And I don't know if I could have lived myself for $147 to know that a pregnant woman doesn't have, you know, electricity. And so we paid it, and the power company wouldn't tell me anything except for thank you for the payment. So she had told me what to pay, and it worked out in our favor. But if it hadn't, I wouldn't feel bad about the loss of the money.
I mean,
she needed it.
That's remarkable, and I am so inspired when I hear from adoptive parents who look at their call to adopt in a bigger light, where they can see that maybe there's someone in some way that we need to just help someone in need. And if this happens to be a risk towards our own adoption dream, you know, I mean, had it been $1,000, maybe you would have considered it even more, you know, or longer, debated that in a different way. But certainly with a power bill or a phone bill, something like that, that if your state allowed you to and you had it within your means, I mean, what a way to show her that you're willing to build a trust with her and to take that step forward, and that you also just cared about what she was going through.
Right.
I mean, because most of us on the call tonight, I would say we probably, maybe we remember times in our life where we almost missed the bill, or it was maybe a few days later or a week later or something, but that we may, you know, we may never have even known anyone in our lives who's had their power turned off. And to identify with somebody in a different kind of circumstance than your own, I think that sometimes is the biggest hurdle for adoptive families with birth parents, is that they can't always understand when they themselves make certain choices in their life to stay on track. Then they meet these women who are not, you know, bad, irresponsible people, but they just don't have the same circumstances, and it's a completely different fork in the road.
Right. Well, and we were a little concerned about, well, what if she calls every month? What if she does that? And she's a very proud girl, and she paid for half of her plane ticket out here when Cassie turned 1. She came over for 5 days.
Oh,
so
wow.
she knows that she feels better paying at least half of what it takes to come and see us. So it didn't make her feel like she should reload. It actually went the other way, and she feels like she should do what she can.
So
for herself.
One of the pictures I brought up here was probably right after you brought Cassidy home. She's got those tiny little feet. And but this woman in the picture is actually Connor's birth mother, Karen.
That is Connor's first birthday. She came and visited. So Cassie was only, gosh, she must have been 2 months old.
Oh, wow. So one of the questions we had come in said, and this kind of ties in with something else that we were going to bring up tonight too, especially since you've had visits with each of these women. But one of the questions that was asked, Tanya, is, did you ever have a fear with open adoption of not being the mommy?
No. We started really young explaining to the kids that they were adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just started calling the birth mom Belly Mama and letting them know, you know, she grew you and she wanted what's best for you. And so she gave you us and she grew you for us. And so they were pretty aware that I didn't grow them. And you could ask them, gosh, they must have been like 12 months old. Did mommy grow you in her belly? Mm-mm. They knew the answer was no. And who grew you? And they could point to a picture of their birth mom. So the birth moms were very concerned about what to be called. And, you know, Connor calls her Sharon. And I'm sure that Cassie will do the same with Kayla because that's what's comfortable for the kids. And I've not seen anything that has been threatening. They're very aware to ask before they're like, oh, can I do this? And it's never been anything that steps on toes.
And so when you have these visits, like for instance, you said that she came for Connor's 4th birthday, and then we have a picture. Let me bring this up here. We'll skip around a little bit. Let's get over here. I want to show a picture that you had with Cassidy's 1st birthday, and Kayla came to visit. So when these women were coming and they even stayed with you, and then you had these birthday parties, how do you introduce these women to other people in your family who may not be completely familiar with your story?
Most people are familiar with our story. They just forget, and they'll ask silly questions and then feel silly when they realize, oh, you didn't crave pickles when you were pregnant because you haven't been pregnant. A lot of the times we will weed through the list of people that are coming and who needs to be reminded and who needs to be pulled aside and say, hey, just so you know, a birth mom's going to be there for the kid, and don't ask her how she knows us. She's family. So, and for the most part, we haven't had any issues.
I mean, does it, you and I were talking yesterday that it went, you said something about how these days sometimes you stand back and think, oh, wow, completely, it's almost like I've relaxed to the point where now I sometimes have to remind myself that I adopted these children, because I think it's common for a lot of adoptive parents early on when that relationship with the birth mom is so new to be really conscious of it all the time. But do you eventually feel like it doesn't become a daily conversation in your head?
I was intensely aware with Connor for a long time, and I didn't realize until after we had gotten matched with Cassidy that I was so afraid that Connor was going to be the only child that we got to raise that I treated him like he was a super fragile gift. And I was very aware that we were given this life to raise and we need to treat him just right and do this. And then, and then he hits 2 and he starts peeing on the indoor plants and stuff. And then you start to realize, okay, I need to parent this child and stop treating him like he's a glass figurine. He needs to be raised like a little boy. And when we got Cassie, we didn't really have time to kid gloves on, and we dove in and started parenting.
Yeah.
And it's very different. And it's when people say, oh my gosh, your daughter is so beautiful. I'm like, oh, well, thank you. You should see her birth mom. And I'm the one that opens that door, because she is a beautiful little girl, but I didn't make her, and Kayla deserves the credit for the gorgeous little girl we have.
Have you had, since the kids are kind of getting to that age, especially Connor, where he's having his own little circle of friends, is it coming out yet where he's starting to have different kinds of questions because other people don't have stories like his?
Nope, he doesn't question it. We didn't tell him. We didn't tell him who made him for us, and he was very curious about Kayla. We knew that Kayla made Cassidy for us. We knew that she gave Cassidy to us to raise. And he was so thrilled to have a little sister, and he just doted on her. And so when Karen came over when he turned 4, it was perfect timing to say, hey, do you mind if we explain to him that you made him? And she said, no, but I probably will cry. And I said, okay. And she's like, so are we going to do this now? And I said, sure. So it was me and Jake and Karen and Connor. And I said, hey, Connor, who made Cassidy for us? And he said, Caleb. And I said, do you know who made you for us? And he said, no, I don't. And I said, Karen made you for us. And he looked at her, and his eyes got even bigger. And he said, you made me little? And I'm bawling. And she's tearing up. And she said, yes, I did. And he looked at her, and he flexed his arms up like Hulk, and he said, and now I'm big. And he took off running. And that was the end of the conversation. He was like, okay, that's cool. It was very funny. And we started laughing because, you know, you dread it and dread it and dread it, and it was so not a big deal to him. And it's never been a big deal to him. But he never forgot it.
Do you think that it's helped you have different conversations with Cassidy, even though she's so little, so that you're not getting to that moment of, okay, now is the right time to really make that clear? Do you think it's going different with her?
It is different because Kayla and I had so much of a connection early that, I mean, Connor didn't get to see Karen for quite a while after we got him. And I want to say that 4th birthday was the first time that we had been able to connect, even though we're in the same state. So we flew Kayla from Ohio for the 1st birthday, and there was a connection between Cassidy and Kayla. And, you know, Kayla was trying to snuggle Cass, and Cass was fine with it for a little while, and then she was like, you know what, I want my mom. And so she'd start to reach for me. And I'm sure it hurt Kayla, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be to watch Kayla snuggle Cass.
Well, because like you said, you think of them like sisters. I mean, I'm sure if you watched your biological sister or even your aunt or grandma snuggling your child or even a best friend, that you're thinking, they just love my baby as much as I do. You know, that I could see that being a natural transition, is just, I care about this woman and she's loving on my baby.
Yeah, I was a little nervous about feeling possessive of her, and it didn't happen. So that was good.
So I want to back up a little, because I think one of the most touching things you and I talked about yesterday was how you said earlier in the conversation tonight that Karen, who's actually on the screen right now, she was adopted. And so I'm going to bring up the photo that you sent me of you and Jake and Connor and Cassidy with Karen's parents. Now, these are technically her adoptive parents.
Correct.
And so how is it, and we had, actually, let's answer this first while we have this photo up, because I think this might be a shorter answer, but we also had another question in that said, do you have any contact with their birth fathers, and what is that like?
We do, and it's kind of funny because the women contact me, and Jake has contact with Ryan, who is Connor's birth father, much more than I do. They always chit-chat together, and I'm oblivious to it until after the fact. Kayla, right? Kayla doesn't know who the birth father for Cassidy is for sure. So we jumped through hoops to get that taken care of through the state properly. So we don't have any idea who he is. So yes, we do have contact with Ryan, and it's not very often for Jake, and it's almost never for me. We saw him, we met in the middle of the state last October, and saw Ryan. And so he's probably seen Connor twice, and we would be all for more if we could make it work in his schedule.
Mm-hmm. So now we have grandparents up here. What is that like to have the birth family involved? Do they think of your kids as their grandkids? Do your kids think of them as their own grandparents? Do you have special names for them?
That's Grammy Corrine and Papa Mark, and Connor named them. They didn't choose them. They were perfectly fine with whatever Connor called them, and he dubbed them that. They treat Cassidy like a grandchild. These are the only 2 grandkids that they have. And they come out and visit us probably three times a year, maybe 4, because they live in Washington. Once Cassidy was born, they started getting hotel rooms because we don't have a place to put them. And when Cassidy was born, they contacted Jake, because I was at work, and they said, hey, just so you know, we redid our will. Connor had been in it, but we added Cassidy, and they're equal beneficiaries, and we hope that that's okay. And so that was a big surprise for us. We didn't expect anything like that. And we knew that they would accept Cassidy as a sibling for Connor, and that they would be grandparents-ish, but we didn't expect the full-blown grandparent treatment. So that was really cool. That was a huge surprise.
What is that like for Kayla and Karen, being birth parents of each one of your child? Do they when they have visited the couple times, do they dote on the other child too, or is it more focused on their biological child?
Well, Karen she's married now. She's a boyfriend that was from the hospital. And she's not able to get pregnant at this point, and she doesn't know why. So Connor's probably going to be her only child. And so she was like, give me that baby, I'll snuggle her, because I was busy. And so it was kind of a relief to be able to pass her off, especially to someone that just wanted to snuggle. And then Kayla has boys that are Connor's age, so she's fully aware of how to entertain that age of a boy. So she was right at home. It was probably less homesick for her because of Connor.
Okay.
So it was, I don't know, it just fits really well.
I mean, and are you and Jake aware that what you have in your adoption stories is, I don't want to say it's not common, because I see it happening more and more, but that a lot of times it could just be more of, we just want to get emails with photos or letters with photos and maybe a phone call now and then. Did you ever imagine it would look like this? And do you ever have people asking you, well, was this really what you wanted?
It's kind of funny because we were like, oh, I don't know, photos and emails. I'm terrible about emails. I hate answering the phone. Oh, my gosh. And then we have to be obligated. Oh, we have to send, a letter every other month, but where am I going to find the time? And then when it came down to it, it's like, oh, my gosh, Facebook, thank you. Here's 100 photos of your child. Thank you. And, they're very respectful, and they are aware of being private. And, I have Facebook, and I'm active on it mostly for the extended family that we've gotten. All of Kayla's family's on it. And, once her sister put Cassie's name wrong and put Kayla's last name, and I was like, how do you say something, do you not? And I was like, I'm going to say it. And so I Facebook messaged her, and I said, I don't know if you meant to, but just so you know, Cassie's last name is this. And she went, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And it had been an error. She was typing quickly. So we have a lot of contact. And when people ask me, do you have an open adoption, it's like, oh yeah, but it doesn't feel that open to me because it's not invasive. So when we fill out forms that say, how open is your adoption? And we get down to very open, and we have to circle it. Like, well, it doesn't feel like it's that open.
Right.
It's so natural that it's not like, your dad where you call him every other day, or your mom where you're getting emails throughout the day. It's not a daily thing.
I mean, that's kind of what my next question was more on like a daily basis, because we're talking a lot about sort of some special occasions, and that, like you said, I think it's worth pointing out for those of you on the call who may be thinking, well, I would be open to visits if it's what it took, but I'm really nervous, to hear that the first time they got together with Connor's birth mom, he was 4. So
yeah, and we got to go back to Ohio. We had to, but we got to see Kayla, and she was beside herself excited. And we stayed at a hotel in Columbus where we were closing that had a water park. And so she came down for the night, and she stayed with her mom and her boys. And we played in the water park for 2 days. And, oh, my gosh, it was such a blast. And Cassie was, 6.5 months old. And it was like, hey, bond with her, and I'm going to go water slide. It was like having a sister there. And we looked forward to it for a long time. And, the visits are so few and far between, it sucks. I wish we could see them more often. But realistically, it doesn't happen.
And so on a daily basis, it's probably no contact, like you said, extended family, but then you're keeping in touch on Facebook in the same casual way that we keep in touch with people we barely even know.
Right.
But then, I mean, are you ever exchanging text messages, or, how often does that kind of thing happen?
I usually wait and see what's going on Facebook. Kayla will contact me if she's upset. I'm the person she runs to. She's in a happy relationship that's stable, and he's good to her, so I don't hear very much from her, which is good. That means she's happy, and I'm fine with that. With Karen, if I see something on Facebook like, oh my gosh, just got my truck back from the shop, I'll text her and say, hey, what's going on? And we'll text for a couple hours while we're cooking dinner, and the kids are taking baths. And so, it's a couple hours, maybe a month total. It's not really much of your life. And you gain so much knowledge. Like, hey, Connor can't blow bubbles out of his nose in swim class. What's wrong with him? And she's like, well, I can't blow bubbles either. It hurts. So,
oh, wow.
Genetically, his nose is messed up, and it's her fault. So we teach her about that. But it just explains so much. Well, he has sinus problems because she's got horrible sinus. He was 5 when we figured that out. It's just stuff like that that doesn't come up, that you just kind of go, hey, I wonder if Karen. Hey, I wonder if.
And you shared a couple examples yesterday, which I think this is such a great example of one of the benefits of open adoption. And I think probably our whole time together tonight, I hope that all of you who are listening can hear just these different benefits, that it's as much about embracing the family as it is being comfortable with telling your child how you all came together, but then also logistically that you have this medical insight and this tap that you can go to and say, hey, they're going through this. Does that run in your family? Because, Tanya, you and I were talking yesterday, and I know that one of the things when you become matched with a birth mother is that Lifetime shares every bit of information that we have on her, and as much information as she knows at the time about her family medical history too, but that we were kind of reflecting that any of us, when we're in crisis, or even when we just have even the sniffles and we're going to the doctor to find out why we can't kick a cough that's lasted for 10 days, sometimes you're not in the frame of mind to remember every single tiniest detail of your family history, and that you and Jake have been able to reach out and say, hey, this has come up. Does this run anywhere in your families? And that with each child you have significant experience with that, right?
Right. With Connor, he ended up having respiratory distress when he was 4 months old, and we hadn't contacted Karen, and she hadn't contacted us yet, so we didn't really know what was going on. And the doctors just said, oh, he must have a cold. Okay, well, at 7 months, he spent 3 days in the hospital admitted, and he was severe, very bad respiratory failure. And I sent an email to Karen and to Mark and Kareem for adoptive parents, and to her, the people on the screen are her birth parents, Nancy and John, and to Ryan and Ryan's mom. I had everybody's email. I said, this is what's going on. What can you tell me? And, you know, within 2 hours, I had 6 responses. And asthma runs in Connor's family, and it's not. It was like his great-grandparent. It was very distant. But that gave the doctors a diagnosis, and they started him on drugs for asthma, and he's outgrown it now. But it made a significant difference because they didn't know what was wrong with him. And asthma, they don't diagnose it until they're over, too. So for us to get a diagnosis at 7 months was reassuring that we did the right thing. And with Cassidy, we got the paperwork, and Kayla looked healthy as a horse. And then, you know, I'm sitting there listening to her and her mom, and they're like, oh, yeah, Kayla can't have general anesthesia because her mom had almost died in surgery from it because of sensitivity to the drugs that they use, and most general anesthesia provided. And so I was like, okay, keep that locked in your brain. And so when the anesthesiologist came in, he said, hey, have any problems? Kayla said no. And I was like, wait, I know this. And because of family history with that, Cassidy shouldn't have general anesthesia either. And that was something that Kayla had forgotten to put on the medical stuff. And that would have come up at some point.
So, yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, and yeah, and Cass was tongue-tied when she was born. And I happened to notice it when she was 3 weeks old, so we got it done before she was, I think you have to do it for the 30 days old, or you have to have general anesthesia. And I contacted Kayla, and I said, hey, are your kids tongue-tied? And she's like, oh, shoot, I forgot to tell you about that. So it was just stuff like that that came up that was helpful.
Which is funny. I've never heard it called that, but I knew a couple of kids. I know what you're talking about, where they can't. It's like their tongue all the way to the tip.
She couldn't even put her tongue out past her teeth. It was very bad.
Because it just needs to be clipped, that little webby part under your tongue.
Yeah, it was traumatizing for me. She was good.
And that here, since Kayla had children before, that you were comfortable saying, hey, did your other kids need this? And that she was able to acknowledge that. Having that connection to just be so casual so that it didn't feel so much like, oh, gosh, you know, we kind of cut her off, but now we really need some information, so we need to, you know, how are we going to approach her? It was more just like, hey, help me out, and that these women were happy to be there for you.
Well, and I'm pretty open and honest and blunt, so I don't think that if I sent a text that said, hey, were your kids tongue-tied, I don't think that they would bat an eye.
Right.
But that's the relationship that we formed, and they know that I'm not malicious or snotty, or I need to know, and I want to know now. Patience isn't my virtue.
So one of the photos that I had up a moment ago was actually of you guys when you went to meet with Karen and her biological parents. And so now you have even more grandparents in the picture here.
Right.
You know, we never really touch on this, but do your respective parents ever feel like, well, I'm the main grandparent, you know, or do they also embrace this whole idea of a bigger family?
They embraced it. There was a little bit of hesitancy because they thought that, you know, we should do IVF, so they knew that I have a sharp tongue and they know I'm open about my feelings, so they went to my Catholic sister-in-law and said, we think that they should do IVF. And she said, no, and this is why. And she outlined it for them. And that was the end of that. So I didn't even have to be the bad guy there. She took it for me. But which was really nice because I was in a bad place before we got Connor. I was not happy. And I just wanted to be called Mom, and I didn't care what color or anything. I just wanted a baby, and I wanted to be called Mom. Yeah, so I haven't heard anything at all negative about how much of a family our kids have. It seems like it's more of a blessing than anything.
Which, I mean, you touched on something there that I just wanted to ask because we did have a couple questions come out. You know, we're looking at you and Jake, and you are a Caucasian couple, and you ended up with Caucasian babies. A lot of families, when they approach adoption, you know, they're thinking about international or foster care or open adoption within the states, and they're thinking, well, how do I choose what to search for? How did you and Jake decide on your adoption preferences, as far as, especially with respect to the race of the child that you were open to? Because I know that that's dear to your heart when you talk to other people thinking about adoption too.
Well, we kind of feel like beggars shouldn't be choosers, but we also are realistic. And so we live in a town of 1,000 people, and the school has the elementary and the high school combined. So it's a very small town, and all of the kids know each other. And we didn't think that it would be fair to put a full African-American child in that kind of an environment. We felt like that's too small of a town to have that much attention towards something so minor. Who cares? But we didn't want to make our child uncomfortable and be raised in a position where they're, oh, that's that kid. And so we said we would do any Caucasian mix of any sort, and we said any sex. And with Connor, I think we said newborn only, because I had it in my head that I had to have a newborn. And with Cassidy, I think we said up to 2 months, and then we changed it up to 4 months or 6 months, I think. And it was, we got placed in between that time. So, and Cassidy was listed as half Caucasian, half African American with that time. So when we signed up for her, that's what we expected.
Really?
So Cassidy means curly hair. Yeah.
See, well, and I know, going back to, you said that you guys aren't certain who her biological father is, and so that's such a good point to point out, because there have been times when these women have said, well, it could be between a couple men, or I just honestly am not sure.
Lifetime that.
And
she wasn't going to tell Lifetime. She thought for sure that it was going to be the African-American guy. And then when I talked to her, she's like, well, it could be this other white guy. And I said, okay. And so when Cassie, when she was in labor, I really needed to know that her husband could not be the father, because I didn't want to do the whole Maury thing in the hospital. I don't think I could have handled that. And so I said, is there any way that this baby could be Dawn? And she said, no, absolutely not. We haven't been together for 10 months. And I said, okay. So when I caught her, she had dark curly hair, and she had purple hands and feet, and she looked like a beautiful mix. And when they saved her and gave her back to me, I said, that's not the baby I caught. And they were like, oh, yes. And she certainly is. She's very Italian-blooded. She pains, and she's definitely not half.
Which I think
is funny.
Is worth pointing out, because one of the benefits I see to even working with a place like Lifetime is I know that most of the time birth mothers are pretty upfront with us, but that sometimes, especially in those initial calls, you know, they're feeling a little insecure. They may even feel embarrassed about their circumstances, and they may hold back a little. And so then what's a benefit is that you have Lifetime, and then you have the adoptive parents, and sometimes then she will even open up to you more, because she's recognizing this is going to be a lifelong connection, and that they're going to be my baby's parents, and they start to soften and share more, and then you can fill us in, and then we can share with you maybe things that came out that she wasn't comfortable telling you, and then you get this attorney involved, and it's also another voice to sort of wrap this whole picture together, and to keep in touch with everyone, so that you're all on the same page, but that you guys were open, because that's something I've seen before too, is that when we do have the knowledge, like had she said, I'm not really sure what this baby's race will be, we would have looked for families that were open to either, like you guys were, fortunately.
And on that, if we had depended on Lifetime for contact with her, I honestly don't think that she would not have stayed in contact with us. It was up to me to kind of keep her on the hook, so to speak, to keep in contact with me. But Lifetime didn't know what was going on with her. You guys were calling me saying, hey, how is Kayla? She's not answering the phone.
Yeah.
Hey, how is Kayla? We got returned mail. Hey, what's going on? And so I was like, oh, we're fine. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And without her knowing that I was supporting her, I really don't think she would have stayed with us. And she adored us, and she truly loved us. But I think that by being able to lean on us and be able to know that we would be there for her no matter what, you know, we flat out said, you know, if you want to keep Cass, we understand. This is a gift for us, and we get it, and we understand it, and we know it's hard. But we're here for you no matter what. And you know what? She's got a good taste in her mouth about adoption and about us. And if it didn't work out with us, we knew we could leave Ohio without a baby. But we also knew that she would have a very good opinion of us if she knew someone that said, hey, I'm pregnant, what do I do? Hey, I know a couple that want a baby. You know, word of mouth is huge. And we kind of expected her to contact us by now and say, hey, you guys want another? Because she's in a very poor part of Ohio. And we had told her, you know, if you ever need us for an adoption or anything, let us know. And thankfully, she's not needed to call us, and she's been happy and healthy and safe. So
I think, and
she knows she can contact us.
That's such a good point, Tanya, because I think a lot of times people who are wanting to adopt a child underestimate the power that they have of creating an overall impression of adoption on women considering adoption, and that had she decided to parent, that she still would have known, you know, there's some pretty awesome people out there who want to adopt. It's not freaky, it's not stereotypical, it's, you know, they're legitimate, they're caring, thoughtful, they were there for me, and they understood when I changed my mind kind of people, and that she could help someone else. But then also I would say that just having that knowledge probably helped her continue to move forward too, because she realized she could trust you.
Well, and I honestly think with both of them, if they had changed their mind and tried to raise a child, I don't think that they were stable mentally enough to be able to handle the physical part of healing and raising. And, you know, Kayla has 2 boys. She doesn't have time for herself, let alone a newborn. And I seriously think we would have ended up with the child anyway. So by supporting their decision either way, I think we would have come out with a child.
With Cassidy, yeah. Yeah. I
So you never know.
I'm
because
grateful.
They say, what if?
Yes.
You could still end up with them.
Well, and I hope those of you who are listening that if you had any concerns or just any confusion about what open adoption could be like, that maybe just hearing just Tanya be so candid about it would help you even just form the questions in your mind that you need more information about, because I would say most people in general, whether you're meeting a birth parent or parents of someone you want to marry or interviewing for a job, I mean, whenever you're thinking about keeping in touch with strangers, it's pretty hard to imagine. But then when you sit down and you start learning about them step by step, just like any relationship, then it turns into, I could see myself in this. You know, and I would say, Tanya, you guys are probably lucky that you ended up with, your stories are very different, but at the same time, that level of openness is similar.
I was scared to death that Cassidy's birth mom, before we were matched, scared that we would not have an open adoption. Because I didn't want her to look at Karen and say, how come I don't have that? Why am I not special enough for that? And we get so much confusion with our family being like this, and so much support. They have so many grandparents, I can't even count them. And it's not weird. It's fun, and it's fun for the kids to get to go, oh, that's grandma and grandma and grandma and grandma and grandma.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been more fun than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the support is helpful.
Do you have any, any final tips that you just feel like after these years that you just feel like you wish more people would embrace or understand before they get matched, or even if they're in the middle of getting to know them?
You need to trust her. You need to let her know, hey, I'm quiet. Hey, I'm shy. Hey, I'm scared. I'm nervous. You need to be honest about your emotions. And I am impatient and blunt, and I told them both that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I ask the questions, it's not to be taken the wrong way. Please feel free to ask me anything. I will answer any question you have. And I can't remember what Kayla asked me, but she's nervous about asking me something. And it wasn't anything at all to me, but it was a big deal for her to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so trivial that I felt good that she felt like she could ask, because I knew she was scared. So the open communication, I think, is more important than anything else, and keeping in mind that they are more scared than you. Ours were, for sure.
Thank you for that reminder, because that's what I see, is that often both sides are coming from this state of nervousness, but that you have to remember that your circumstances as an adoptive parent in waiting are usually at least 2 times more stable than what she's going through.
And follow through with your promises.
Mm-hmm.
If you promise to call her, call her. If you promise to text her, text her. If you don't text, start. Texting was hugely beneficial. I would have had a nervous breakdown if I didn't text with Kayla, because Lifetime hadn't heard from her in 2 months, and I heard from her daily.
Right.
That was huge.
And that's why I just want to say, especially for those of you who are already waiting with Lifetime, this is a little reminder that when you find out that your child's birth mom is in labor, that you are also responsible for calling and telling Lifetime, because she may not have told us yet. And so between the 2 of you, if we can find that out, that we know, and so Tanya, you were able to keep us in the loop so that we could do what we could through it. But I just love hearing how things are today, and these beautiful connections that you have with these families that you never probably even imagined would become part of your heart. And I just am so grateful you could share that with us tonight. And we had all these comments coming in just thanking you so much for sharing.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to share our story. We're very happy with it, and we're very candid about adoption.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, if any of you have questions that were sparked from Tanya's stories tonight, or if you have questions about how Lifetime could help you with your own adoption story, please reach out to us. We want to be a resource for you. We want to be an educator, a support for you, and maybe be even a bigger part of how your story comes together. And again, you can reach us Monday through Friday at 530-432-7373. If you prefer email, you can always email adopt@lifetimeadoption.com. And I know Jen earlier was trying to tell all of you that if you're more comfortable texting or Skyping or using live chat online, that we can also answer questions for you that way too. So please reach out to us and let us know how we can best connect with you so that you get the answers you need, so that you can move forward and find the child that is waiting to become a part of your family. So, and Tanya, I just want to wish all of you guys in your family blessings, and I hope that you'll continue to keep in touch, because we love your updates.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And I know Jen was busy answering a lot of your questions in the background, and I'm thankful that she could be here to help us out tonight. And we will all meet again with you in a couple weeks. Thank you. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.